Hello, I'm Natalie Haynes and I am the author of Pandora's Jar, Stone Blind, 1,000 Ships and now Divine Might, which looks at goddesses in Greek myth in the sort of the same way that I did women in Greek myth with Pandora's Jar. But what I really wanted to do here was look at how powerful these goddesses are, because it seemed to me that quite a lot of the time more modern sources in particular, and sometimes our ancient sources, but much less often, focused on the negative elements of these goddesses. So Hera, for example, is always presented to us as the jealous, vengeful wife. And she is jealous, and she does take some terrible acts of revenge, and particularly against women. It makes it really hard to know how to approach her. Well, very carefully, I suppose, is the obvious answer. But at the same time, she's also a wife of a violent husband, Zeus. They have a relationship which I think would constitute coercive control. And I think it makes it much easier to understand her as a character rather than just a force of evil if you think about the fact that she lives in this deeply abusive, deeply toxic relationship and the effect that that has on her. And maybe it would make it less unforgivable, I'm not sure, but it certainly makes it more comprehensible, and I think that's really important. And in some ways I think there are goddesses I wanted to reclaim because they had been largely forgotten, like Hestia, who is one of the Olympian gods, but you wouldn't know it because no one ever mentions her. She's like the invisible woman, and so I wanted to show you how central she was in ancient Greek worship, that she used to receive the first and last sacrifice at every temple to every god or goddess, but somehow we kind of forgot that she was there. She's present in every house, she's the hearth, the center of every house, but we just sort of lost track of her. And then there are goddesses where we kind of think of them as a sort of, in kind of a benign positive, like Demeter, who is, you know, the mother goddess in some ways because she's mother to Persephone. That's one of the most famous bits of her story. But I think we've tended to focus on Persephone, the sort of ersatz romanticism of this, you know, goth princess going down to the underworld, to the point where we have wholly overlooked the fact that she is trafficked, that there's a conspiracy between her father and her uncle to traffic her to the underworld. She's taken in forced marriage. This is not a romantic story at all. It's an incredibly disturbing story. And Demeter, her mother, manages to win her a partial reprieve, not because, you know, it seems fair to somebody. Nobody cares about Demeter's feelings and nobody cares about Persephone's feelings, or at least nobody with any power. But because Demeter simply refuses to give up when her daughter is taken away, because she searches night and day for Persephone, and because she refuses to stop searching, because she afflicts all of humankind with a famine for a year until Zeus is prepared to engage and talk about returning Persephone. That's the side of her that I felt that we hadn't spent very much time talking about or thinking about, that we got lost in this sort of tragic mother of goth princess daughter. It's like, you know, no, there is a lot more to Demeter, there's a lot more to Persephone, and there's a lot more to this story, which, as I say, in my view, is kind of the opposite of romantic. I wanted to look at Aphrodite, who gets so much blame for being, you know, always such a terrible influence on our lives. And, you know, obviously I want to talk, she is a terrible influence, but I did want to look at the things that happen to her and that she does. I wanted to reconsider the myths of Athene, goddess of wisdom, of warfare, of crafts, and see why it might be that she could be made so angry by a mortal girl named Arachne that she would turn her into a spider. You'll have to find out more.